welcome back to Beyond the Cal. Today we are starting to look at graphs, those little square charts of colour making up a picture, and today's chart is of this cute little cat, and I have made this in a cross stitch design on top of the crocheted fabric. So I'm going to show you how to do this technique. And first of all, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about working graphs, and then I will show you this cross stitch technique. There we go. So stay tuned and we will get started. Okay, so for cross stitch, as I said, you need to start with a basic square or a piece of fabric, crocheted fabric that is at least the same size as your graph. So this is 21 stitches by 22 rows high. So I have a square here, a single crochet, and I did a chain of 26 and then worked into the second chain from the hook and did 25 single crochets across. Okay, so 25 single crochets, and then I just did a chain 1, turned my work and did another 25 back, chain 1, turn, 25, and I did that all the way up, and I did 30 rows for me, with a 4.5mm hook and general double knit yarn. Double knit is also light worsted weight yarn. So for the 4.5mm hook and the DK yarn, it came out at exactly 6 inches. Okay, so I have more rows than I need, but that's fine, and I have more stitches than I need, but that's fine too. So you need to make your basic piece of fabric, and okay, so I'm just looking at my notes here of what I need to tell you. So because this is 25 stitches wide and our graph is 21, that means I have 4 extra stitches. So I'm going to give 2 stitches extra on each end. So I'm going to have 2 stitches on this side and 2 on this side that I will not use. Okay, so I'm going to start 2 stitches in. So also, because this cat comes from the corner, kind of goes off the page, I'm going to start in this bottom corner, so I will have extra at the top. Okay, it will come to, so 22 rows will be about here, I think. So that's just roughly, I'm not really counting, so it will leave some extra rows at the top, but because this is set in the corner, I think that it would look better coming from this corner rather than being sort of doing it totally central and doing it sort of up here. Okay, so if you have a picture that is more central on your graph, then you will just probably want to calculate where the center is and work from there. Okay, so I'm going to start from sort of this corner here. And as I said, I'm going to leave 2 stitches on each end. So that's what you need to do. You need your piece of fabric. So as I said, I've got 25 stitches by 30 rows, and that makes an exactly 6 inches square. You could do it for the exact size of your graph and not have it square if you wish. It's entirely up to you. And then you won't need your crochet hook anymore. That's just me so I can point some things out. You will need a needle. Now, it's your choice of whether you use your crochet yarn or whether you use embroidery thread. Now, I don't have any embroidery thread to hand, so I'm going to be using my regular yarn. If you use embroidery thread, you will want to use quite a chunky strand so that it doesn't sort of disappear within the crochet, because the crochet is quite textured. You won't want to lose that. So I've got a nice chunky needle for my yarn, and then I've got some scissors and snips here. Now, because I've got some sore fingers, I'm wearing plasters, I'm going to use my snips today so I don't have to get my fingers into these little tiny holes. So some snips or scissors, and then you may find some stitch markers helpful to save you counting. So say like somewhere here where you've got a long row of black stitches, you may wish to count on your fabric how many you need and put a stitch marker in the last hole so that you don't have to keep counting, or you can just keep counting, entirely up to you. Okay, so that's, you might wish to do some stitch markers to mark your place. And that is it. The only other thing is you might wish to have a cup of tea or coffee, or a drink. So I normally have a cup of tea or coffee, but today I've just got a cold drink because you can probably hear that I'm a bit croaky. So they're the things you need. Oh, and obviously you need your yarn or tapestry thread. So I am doing the cat in black. Now, because this background is white, you don't have to do white. You can change these colours however you please. So I'm going to do a black cat, then I've got white for the eyes. Now, I'm not going to cross stitch all of this outside piece. I'm going to make it so that this cat is just the raised part. But these white parts inside, or any part that's the same colour as your background, you could be tempted to not do those stitches, but it does add to the overall look if you do make those stitches, or you end up with just sort of an empty sort of dip, really. So unless you wanted to have that sort of what's the word, engraved look, then so it sort of dips down, then I would encourage you to make those stitches that are the same colour as the background. But as I said, I'm going to leave all these ones around the outside, and then it will just make the cat just sort of come off of the fabric slightly. Okay, so I'm going to do black cat. I've got the white for the eyes. I've got some pink for his ears and nose. And then I'm going to do a blue collar. Okay, so grab your colours of yarn or thread. They're quite important to have. And then, very, very soon, going to get into actually doing the stitching. Let me just see what else I need to tell you. So, when we are counting our stitches, I said I'm going to start 2 rows in, and I'm going to start with the black. Now, you will need a copy of this graph, which you can find in our Facebook group. So if you look at the description box below, there's a link to the a Facebook group, Beyond the Cal. So if you go to that group, and then the announcement for today will have, the announcement in an hour's time, will have this file. Otherwise, you can look for it in Unit 5 graphs. Or just ask, and someone will direct you to the right place. So you need a copy of this to refer to. And the other thing is, you might need, might appreciate to have a pencil or a pen to mark off the squares that you've done. So I said I'm going to start 2 stitches in. I'm actually going to start 3 stitches in because I want 2. I've got 2 extra stitches, and then I've got a white strip here. So I'm going to start 3 stitches in, okay, if that makes sense. The 2 extra plus the 1 white. And I'm going to start with the black, 3 stitches in, and 2 rows up. So how do we count those stitches and rows when we have single crochet? Well, the easiest way, let me zoom in. Okay, so the easiest way to count is if you see these holes. Okay, so when you look at these holes, each of these holes is a row. So first hole here, row 1, row 2, my camera's not liking me keep moving my hook, but row 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so they are your rows. They're slightly staggered, but don't worry about that, it's fine. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then to count your stitches across, it's you've got your first stitch is this bit here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that is how you count your stitches and rows, and each cross stitch is going to take place over the post of a stitch, so this kind of part here. And if you see four holes, this is where one stitch is going to take place. We're going to go through up into this hole, so that's 1, and then down to here is 2, under and up to 3, and then up and down to 4. So we'll be going through, across, under and over. Okay, I will show you that in a moment, but I just want to show you that each cross is made over these four holes, and then the next cross will be over these 4 holes. So these 2 here will have 2 stitches going through them. Okay, so you'll have 1 going here, and then you'll have 1 across here. Okay, and then you'll have this one as well, and then across here, and then you'd work above. So each hole could have up to 4 stitches in it. Okay, if you've got this one, this one, this one, and this one. Okay, so I'm going to show you that in detail in a second. Okay, and anything else that I need to tell you, I think I can tell you as we go along. So I'm going to thread my needle with my black yarn, and we're going to get started on some stitching. Okay, so when you thread your needle, don't thread it with too much yarn that you will have to be pulling it out for forever and ever. Okay, I've probably got about 24 inches here, maybe. So I'm actually going to start a few rows up just so there's not such a massive gap. So I am going to start 2 stitches in and 5 rows up. So let me see if the camera can focus on here. So this is our first stitch and our first row. Okay, so 1, 2, 3 stitches in, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows up. Okay, and if you want to double check, then you've got 1, 2, 3 stitches there. So I'm going to take my needle through from the back into that hole. Okay, now it's your choice as to whether you want to take it through and leave a tail, or whether you want to just thread it through some of the back loops here. So I'm going to mark that with my thumb, and then you could just take this through a couple of loops at the back just to help secure, if you prefer, and you could take it through once more just to secure that. There we go. Or you can leave a long tail and secure it at the end. Okay, so I'm going to go through this hole now. Okay. So then we are going to go down. So remember, this is hole 1. We're going to go down to hole 2. So diagonally down across to hole 2, go through to the back, and then we're going to come up into hole 3. Pull that. Don't pull it too tight that it pulls the yarn really tight to the work. You want it to still have a little bit of looseness, but if you pull it really tight, it'll just distort it. So we've come up through to hole 3, and then we want to go down diagonally to hole 4. So down to this hole here. There we go, and that is your first cross stitch. So if you've just done that, well done, your first cross stitch has been made. Okay, so let's come back to our graph. So we've made this first square here. Now, my pencil isn't really going to show to you, but I can just about see it shining. So I put a cross through that first one. Okay, now it's best to just do a little area at a time. So I'm going to do these black areas, this black section first. So I need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more black stitches. okay? And we want to try and do them in exactly the same way so that this top piece of yarn comes down this way and the bottom one goes that way. If you keep them all in the same direction and the same way, then it will look a lot neater, rather than the top one this way and then the top one that way, okay? So let's do 5 more, and if you want to, you could, so there's 6 there all together, you could do 6, and then you could say 5, 3, 2, 1, so then you don't have to count them, okay? And that's particularly handy on long rows. So we're going to do 5 more of those. So let me show you how to do that again. So we're going to bring our needle up and into excuse me, so this is now hole 1 for the next stitch. So bring that up into hole 1 and down diagonally to hole 2, up to hole 3, and down to hole 4, and that is your second stitch done. So let's do that again. So up to hole 1. You see I pulled that a bit tighter and it's just taken that, so I'm going to loosen that slightly. Lose the stitch in the crochet. So hole 1 down to hole 2, up to hole 3, and down to hole 4. And I now have 3 and I need 6 in total, so we need 3 more. So I'm going to leave you to do those 3 and I'll come back to you when I have my last 3 done. Okay, so there we go. I've got my row of 6 black cross stitches done. So you can see how it works up there, okay? So what I would do is take my pencil and I'm just going to mark those 6 off. And like I said, I know you can't see my pencil on there, but I can see it shining. Okay, so then the next row, we need to move in a stitch. Okay, you can see we move across a stitch and we do these 5 stitches above what we've already done. So, I'm going to knock things off my table. So the needle at the moment is, or the yarn, sorry, is coming out from this hole here, hole number 4. Okay, so our first stitch would be above this one, so we would start here. So if I turn it over, here we go, so we'll be going up to here. So you can just carry the yarn that short distance across, that's absolutely fine, you're not wasting much at all. You could just go straight up to there and that's fine. Or if you prefer, you could start slightly in reverse and you could just go to this hole here. So instead of hole 1, you could go to hole 2 and you'll still be having your left to right diagonal will still be underneath. So I'm going to go into number 2 and across to number 1 hole. Okay, and then I'm going to come back to number 3 hole and down to number 4, just as I did on the previous stitches. Okay, now I can start as before and go up to number 1, down to 2, up to 3. Now if you see, my needle was nearly going to go through that yarn and split it. Okay, that doesn't give you such a neat look, so try not to go through the yarn that's already there. So 3 down to 4, and then you want to continue this to the end of the row, so it's above this one here, and you'll have 5 cross stitches all together. And there we go, just finishing my 5th stitch. So now you can see you've got 6 here and 5 above. So we've done those 2 rows nicely. So I'm just going to put a line through those. And then the next row, we've got 3 still going up from this side and 3 across. So that's nice and easy. We have the yarn coming from here. So you can just go just that couple of rows up to your first hole there. So just go into that first hole there. From behind, down to hole 2. And continue across for your 3 stitches. Okay, so there we go, 6, 5 and 3, all done nicely. So we've just got another 2 and then a 1 to go. So again, to come up to the next row, we're going to make it here. Okay, we're going to it'll be 1 stitch over. So we are here so far, so you can go straight up to there, or you can do it this way as we did down here. So I'm going to do it that way again. So I'm going to go from hole 2 up to hole 1, and then I'm going to go to hole 3 and down to hole 4. Oops. Okay, and then I'm going to go back and start hole 1 and do these last 2 stitches. See you in a moment. Okay, there we go, and now we have just 1 stitch on the row above. So just take your yarn up and do that last stitch of the black. And there we go. So we have here 1, 2, 3, 5 and 6, and that's exactly the same as this shape here. So well done if you've done your first ever cross stitches. Well done. And if it's looking like this, well done. And if you look at the back, because we've kept it in a fairly systematic way, the back is also nice and neat too. But the back doesn't matter too much. You don't have to worry about a neat back. But yeah, there you go. So that's our first section of black. Now, if you choose to, you could skip this part here where the collar is, and you could go up to do this next black. You could think, I'm going to do all of one colour first, and then I'm going to move on to the other colours, and that's fine, especially if you're more experienced at cross stitch, then you will probably be quite familiar with doing that and counting across and whatever. So you could totally do that if you wanted, but I find that if I go too far away from where I am, I lose count. And the I've done a lot of cross stitch before on the actual like cross stitch fabric, the Ada. This is I'm quite new to doing it on crochet, but I have done it before, and the worst thing ever is when you think you've left the right amount of stitches free and you've moved your colour up to here and you've done all of this black, and then you find that you've not left enough space for some stitches, and then you have to kind of work out, how am I going to fix it to make it look right. So I would say, especially while if you're beginning, that you take it a section at a time and move on to this part here now. Okay, I would totally do that. You can take it row by row, column by column, or just section by section. Okay, so I'm going to do the collar next, but what I'm going to do, because I've still got quite a lot of black here, I'm just going to take my needle out of there and leave that black, because I know the black starts again very soon. I can easily carry that up. Okay, so I'm going to get the colour for my collar. Okay, now because the collar is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches, because I'm going to do the nose and the ears in pink and I'm doing the collar in blue, I don't need very much yarn, but I've cut more than I know I will need because I would rather not run out. Okay, you might have heard me say before that I had a time when I didn't have a lot of yarn and I kind of needed to be a bit more frugal with it, so I was kind of like not wanting to leave very big tails, and yeah, so by all means don't sort of waste the yarn by using more than you need to, but make sure you leave enough. So nowadays I like to make sure I've got enough. So I'm going to show you this way when you can leave a tail to sew in later. So this first square is directly above the black that we've just done. So I'm going to go, just ignore that black piece of yarn that you've got hanging, and I'm going to go into the stitch directly above this last black square. So I'm going to go into that hole, and then I'm going to leave a tail for sewing in later. But for my stitch right now, I'm just going to hold that with my finger so it doesn't pull through. And then I'm going to go down to hole 2, up to hole 3, and across to hole 4, just as we've done before. And now we want to do one on the next row next to that black block. So I'm going to come through, I'm in this hole here at the moment, hole 4, so I'm going to come over, and this will be our new hole 1. Down to hole 2, up to hole 3, and back down to hole 4. Okay, there we go. And then we want to come down to the next row and next to that black. So again, I'm going to go over into this hole here. So hole 1, 2, up to 3, and down to 4. Okay, so there's these 3 so far, and then we've got 2 here together. So again, we're going right next to that black, and then we're going to do these 2. So again, I'm going to come over to this hole here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Make sure that black doesn't get caught up. You can let go of that piece of blue now, that's not going to come out easily. And then I'm going to come across and do the second. Oops. Make sure you don't get tangled with that yarn that's hanging. And then down. And there you go. That's your last one of that colour. And as I know, that's all I'm doing in that colour. I've got no more of it. I'm going to fasten it off at the back and sew it in. So turn it over. Again, move that black out of the way. So I'm just going to come through this piece of blue here. Take it through. And then I'm just going to come back through again. And I'm going to use that kind of knot that we do if we're sewing something. You leave a loop, pop your needle through. You've probably got your own way of doing this, but again, don't pull too tightly that it pulls your yarn down too far at the front. So make sure that you're not pulling it too tightly. Okay, and then just as you would if you were crocheting, you might want to bury this in rather than leaving an end, depending on how what you're going to do with this work afterwards. If you're going to sew them together, these squares, and make a blanket or something, you might want to have it all sewn in nicely. But if you're going to frame it or back it, so the back is not going to be seen or it's not going to get rubbed, then you could just cut that, leave a little length, and not worry about the back at all. But I'm just going to come through these back loops of a few stitches, just the very back part of those stitches, the crochet stitches that is, just so that it won't show on the front. Sorry about that bit of noise there. My husband's in the background, as you've probably realised. Just having a clumsy moment there he was. Okay, so I'm just going to sew this through these back bumps of a few stitches. So as I said, it won't show on the front, but it will just secure it through. Okay, and that is all you need to do. And then once I've taken this through a few stitches, crochet stitches, I'm going to cut it, and then I'm going to do it for this piece here as well. So that's all out of the way, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, so I've marked these pink squares off that were for the collar. You can see here, so this corresponds to what's going on here, and I've sewn in my blue ends, and I've re-threaded the needle with my black. So we can take this wherever we want to take it now. So we are here, so our thread is coming out from here. So we finished on this square here, so that would be here. So what I'm going to do is come across and start on this square here. You can see that. Let's get this one hook. So we finished on this black square here. Zoom in. There we go. So finished here. So I'm going to start on this one here. Okay. So I'm just going to skip behind this one, this pink one, and start here. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I'm going to do 5 across here, and then I'm going to come down and do this row, and then I'll come down and do this row and this one. Okay. Which is why it's good to mark off your squares. So we're going to skip this pink next to it, and we're going to do with 5 stitches. So it's this row here. So we're going to come across to hole 1 and down to hole 2, up to hole 3. Sorry if I was off camera there. Down to hole 4, and then I'm going to continue with 4 more stitches across. So there we go, just finishing, oops, lost my needle, just finishing that last one there. So we've got our 5 stitches along there. Okay, let me just re-thread my needle. Okay, so we have just done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then we want to come down and across one and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. So I'm going to show you this time a slightly different technique of what you can do. So we want to come down and across, so down and across one. So this will be hole 1 here. So I'm going to come into hole 1 and down to hole 2. What you can do is work all of one direction first if you choose to. So I know I need to have 5 altogether, so I've done 1, and then I can work backwards and do 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th one. Okay, so there's 5 all going in the same direction, and then I can start by going in the opposite direction. So for this, I'm going to come down to this, what would be hole 4, and then I've done it again. How crazy is that? Okay, so I'm going to go up, and then come down, across, and you just do all of one direction first, and then you go back in the opposite direction, making sure you're keeping the same direction on top. So all of these we've had going top left to bottom right, we've had on the top. So I'm making sure that this, although it's going bottom right to top left, it's still on top. There we go. So that can be a little quicker, and doesn't give too much of a different look, but it can be a bit quicker. So there you go. So we've done that row of 5 there. So you can cross all of those off. And then the next row below, we want some this way and some that way. So this could be entirely your choice as to what you choose to do. You could take your needle and zoom in. Okay. So you could take your needle and you could just go across to this first stitch here next to your collar, and then you could work across the row and then do the bottom row. Or, because I haven't got much yarn left on my needle at the moment, so I can't do many stitches with that, I'm just going to do these 4 here. I'm going to do these 2, and then I'm going to come up and do these 2, okay? So you can choose to do those in whichever way you prefer, and this is why I said you will need your own copy of this graph, so that you can mark off the squares that you've done if you're doing them differently to me. Okay, so I am just going to do these 4 here, and then I'm going to come and do these. So I will meet you back when I've done these 4 here. So that's 3 next to the collar. Okay, 3 and then 1 down. Okay, so in case I totally confused you there, I'm going to come straight down here. Now, if I go, because I finished in this top corner, I can come back to hole 4. Start there and make my stitch. Just going to do this as a complete stitch here. So that's where I'm starting, and then I'm going to do, oops, taking that the wrong way. And then I'm going to do the next 2, and then I'm going to do 1 more under here. In fact, I could do that one first, couldn't I? That would work. But because I've just come into hole 4, if I come back through there as my hole 1, it's going to pull out. So instead of using that as hole 1, I'm going to use it as hole 2 and start in hole 2 first. There we go. Okay. And then now I can come up and finish these last 2 stitches. Can be a bit tricky when you've got 3 stitches already in one hole. You've got sort of 4 stitches all meeting in the middle there, so it can be a bit tricky, but just take your time and find that hole. So you can see I've really not got much yarn left here, only just about enough for this last stitch. So there we go, and then I'm just going to fasten that off and secure it through. Okie dokie, I have re-threaded my needle with black. I've marked off my stitches on the graph that I've done, and I'm now going to continue by doing all the black on here because it's all, there's nothing in between. I'm going to continue by working up from the bottom, and I'm just going to take it row by row by row. Okay, so literally just, I'm going to do these last 4 stitches here, then I'm going to go up and do that row and then come across. I'm just going to do it row by row by row, and then I will come back and I'll do the pink ears, and then I will do the white pink ears and the nose where there'll be spaces because I'll have counted these stitches around, and then I'll do the white for the eyes, and then it will be finished. So I'm not going to talk you through all of that. You will need to use the graph to follow, but if you do as I've said and just take it step by step, counting each stitch is a hole, so the stitch next to this one will start in the same hole and come down to here. Okay, so each stitch is these 4 holes, and that's the main thing to remember. Okay, so just count carefully, and if you're not completely sure, count twice and then sew. Okay, just if you're not completely sure, just look at this, look at the chart, look back, and just count. Okay, better to count twice and refer to your chart than do it all and then find out you're wrong. So just work it systematically. You could work row by row, or you could work up and down, entirely up to you, whichever way you choose. So that's it really, that's all to tell you. The only other thing which we haven't had to do on here, but sometimes you might have a colour that's down here and then you don't have it anymore until up here, but you think, well, I don't really want to fasten off and then rejoin and have all these ends to deal with. So what you can do for that is what I did when I joined my colour at the start. You can just if you were carrying it from, say, here, just take it through here. If you were starting here, okay, so your needle is coming out from here, but you want it to then, the next stitch of this colour will be up here. Okay, so I know this is the back, so you've come out, this is where your last stitch was made, and you've got to make it up to here. All you need to do is just, if you don't want to cut it, is just go through those back bumps, as I showed you how you can weave in your yarn at the end. Just go through a back bump there, and I'm leaving that end free at the front so I can pull this out again in a second and continue my work properly, and then just skip a few and then go back through another one. Just go through that very back bump so that it won't show on the front. Look, you can't see that on the front. Go through that back bump and then a little bit further up, skip a few and go through another back bump, and then you are there ready to start your next stitch all the way up here, and you can't see that carriage on. There you go. So that's the way you can continue without having to join any piece. I'm going to take that out. Okay, so continue with your graph, continue systematically, and mark off the squares as you go, and take your time. And I will show you my finished cat when I've done. I might take a few clips along the way and show you as it progresses. And there we go, there's my finished cat, and I'm quite pleased with that. So I hope you've managed to finish yours, or you're about to start. I hope you have success with it and enjoy doing the different type of technique with your crochet squares and your graph. So here's my graph. When the time I'm finished, I've got lots of markings on it and crossing out squares and things. So and there's the back, just in case you're interested in what the back of mine looks like. There we go. So I hope you've enjoyed this and found this tutorial useful and helpful. As I said earlier, in a couple of days I will be showing you how to do the corner to corner square, which will be at least double the size of this. So I'll be showing you that technique with a new graph, and we've got more techniques to come over the month. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, then please click that like button, give us a thumbs up, and come and join us on the Facebook group and leave a photo of what you've done with this. Can't wait to see them. So until next time, just keep hooking and don't let your tea get cold.